But I think he made up for being cheap this offseason by absolutely knocking the draft out of the park.
Yeah.
Like, we see a lot of people hyping up the Eagles draft and the Steelers draft, but I think the Colts draft is just as good, if not better, than what they did. Like, I was blown away by some of the value they got, especially down the board. Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by Miller Football, and I'm currently doing a series here on this channel where I am talking about all 32 teams in depth leading up to the 2023 NFL season. And because I'm a Chicago Bears fan, I can't do it alone. I need in-depth insight, that personal expertise on all these teams. So I'm joined by fans of every team in every episode. And if it's not apparent by the background for the gentleman below me, we're going to be talking about the Indianapolis Colts today and eventually the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Richardson. But before we do all that, I'm going to be joined today by Freddy, who's to my right, and then below me, Chris, who's somebody that joined at the very last second. We literally set this up like 10 minutes before we were slated to record, which makes Chris an absolute legend in my book. But before we jump into this, fellas, how are we doing today?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty good. Yeah.
Good. Love to hear it. Hopefully we'll get to be a little bit optimistic about the Colts going into next year, or this coming year rather, after what happened last year. But the first question I want to ask, and this is going to be a little negative, but it is probably the most topical thing with this team, is how do you feel about the Jonathan Taylor situation and the drama going on surrounding him?
I look at it this way. I understand him wanting a new contract and almost wanting to be the one to stand up for the running backs. But at the end of the day, he's not really a major pass catching threat like Eckler, Saquon, guys like that. So he's not going to get that big contract where they're almost paying him to do both.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you, Freddie, on that one because if we're talking about what Jonathan Taylor is capable of, then to me personally, he absolutely deserves to be paid. But he has a lot of things working against him in the fact that this is a terrible market when it comes to running backs. I mean, the highest paid running back right now is Christian McCaffrey, and that was from a contract that he did years ago when he was literally like the focal point of the offense. And I mean, the only other person that you could say is like you have Alvin Kamara, who comes in maybe 15.5 million. And even that's not necessarily justified because the man doesn't, I think he hasn't ran for over 1,000 yards ever. But he once again contributes to the passing game more so than anything else. So, I mean, the rumors of the 16 million, I get that. Like, yes, that's a number you want to touch. Is he worth it? Yes. Will he get that? Absolutely not. There's no way possible, especially not now with the way that running backs are valued in the league. I hope that they get things cleared up. I know that he had an excused absence today for some personal things going on that were not contract related, which Stephen Holder, I know he mentioned. So, I mean, I hope that they get this done. Ballard said yesterday that once he's 100% healthy, then they'll be talking. But right now, it's like I don't expect them to get anything done until Jonathan Taylor can prove that he's 100% ready to go.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Freddie will tell you, I'm a big advocate for the run game. That's like my favorite thing in football, fullback position especially. But when it comes to halfbacks, you guys are absolutely right. Unless you're adding some super dynamic playmaking ability out of the backfield in the passing game, it's really hard to justify paying guys unless they're like a superstar, like not even a superstar, like a almost Hall of Fame talent, like a guy like Derrick Henry is kind of what I'm alluding to there. And much respect to Jonathan Taylor. He's one of the best pure runners in football. He's not Derrick Henry, right? Derrick Henry is on pace to be a Hall of Fame running back. And even then he already got paid. That's in the past. So you look at the guys now that are going to get paid, and it's going to be the guys like Freddie kind of mentioned, Saquon Barkley, except he's hurt. So it's a little bit tough there. Christian McCaffrey's already gotten paid. And then down the road, guys like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, if they are what they're supposed to be as these super versatile, dynamic receiving backs out of the backfield, on top of being, at least in Bijan's case, a really good runner of the football, it makes it a lot more justifiable to pay running backs. And I've talked about this before on this series, but as dehumanizing as it sounds, every single player on every single team is viewed as an asset. And when you have a certain amount of funds that you want to allocate to those assets, you're going to focus on, what gets you the most value. So you look at positions like quarterback, edge, left tackle, wide receiver. That's what's most important in football right now because it's a passing league. And guys like Jonathan Taylor, who, can catch the ball out of the backfield. I'm not saying he's terrible at it or something, but isn't a super dynamic guy out of the backfield. He just isn't necessarily an asset that's worth allocating a lot of funds to. So it's really tough. I do think, I'm with you guys. He deserves to get paid, but it's not going to happen. I don't see a world where he gets what he's looking for at the very least. Maybe they can reach an agreement, meet in the middle somewhere. But then again, Jim Irsay is Jim Irsay, and it's really hard to, meet in the middle with a guy like him who's so egotistical and stuck in his ways and has so much control over what the team's doing. So it's tough. But I hope Jonathan Taylor gets paid.
Yeah. And I think one last thing is just the running back position as a whole is just, I'm going to say it's probably one of the most physically punishing positions that you have in the league because no matter what, I mean, as a running back, you're basically having, outside of O-line and D-line, you have contact on almost every single play. I mean, as a running back, if you're not running, you have to go out as a blocker. If you're not going out as a blocker, you're potentially having to go out as a receiver. So the thing is, it's just like for somebody, especially now where, you see somebody like we can mention a Derrick Henry. And I mean, Derrick Henry is a physical specimen. But if we're talking about how physical of a specimen that he is, this man has been consistently, I'm going to say for the last 6 years, possibly, he's been getting no less than about 300 carries per game. And this is when he also has teams that are stacking boxes against him. So I mean, you have guys that now it's just like they know that they're going to have to do that. Hopefully in the next CBA they change things where you can kind of have those running backs become like that running back wide receiver hybrid so that this way they could potentially get paid more to do those things. But I mean, even with the market the way that it is, that's not stopping teams from running guys over 300 times a season and, having the stakes like they had last year with Josh Jacobs and Saquon and everybody still running for over 1,500 or 1,200 to 1,500 yards, but then also still having that many carries. Like if we don't care that much about the running back position, then put the carries down. If you really don't, but that's once again, that's going to be a discussion for the next CBA.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree 100%. I can't really add anything to that. So we're going to go ahead and shift. Like I said, I hope Jonathan Taylor finds a way to get paid. I don't think it'll happen, but he deserves it. He is a superstar. He's one of the best pure runners in football. I know last year he was a little disappointing, but I think that was more due to factors out of his control than he himself. And we'll talk about that. But just kind of looking at the Colts as a whole last year, this was a team that a lot of people, including myself going into the season, had pretty high hopes for because they had a lot going their way, at least on paper going into the season. And obviously there wasn't a lot to be expected out of the AFC South. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. This was a team that did not have a lot of success. They went 4-12-1. That put them at third in the AFC South, 2-6 at home, 2-6-1 on the road, and then 0-5 in their last 5 games. So my next question for you guys is just, what do you think was the biggest factor in the Colts being so disappointing last year? Because I think there were a lot of things you can point out, but in your opinion, what do you think the biggest one would be?
I'm going to have to say the O-line just seemingly forgetting how to block. I felt like it was starting to become an issue when Anthony Costanzo retired, but it just got really bad last year. And I saw it every time Matt Ryan dropped back. It was like, oh, God, he's getting hit instantly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Frequently. And to kind of piggyback off of what Freddie said, the moment that Chris Ballard basically said, we're not doing anything in terms of the O-line, Matt Pryor has won the opportunity to be the starting left tackle. That's when we kind of knew that it was going to be as bad as it was going to be. We saw that the year before Julian Davenport was bad. And, they kind of let guys go. I know, and of course I forget his name, but he got signed to Minnesota. And then so it's basically Danny Pinter was set up to be the starter. And I don't know if anybody you know knows, but it's just like having that left tackle. That's a very, very crucial position. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you saw how Anthony Costanzo and Quentin Nelson fed off of each other, and now you have Matt Pryor, who, if I'm being completely honest, you probably could have put me and Freddie at left tackle, and we probably would have done a better job blocking for Matt Ryan last year than Matt Pryor did by himself. Yeah, and I don't know, what Freddie's height and weight is. He surely doesn't know mine, but I'm sure together we'd be able to block better than Matt Pryor did at all of 6'7" and whatever it was. So yeah, it was bad. It was awful, but there was no investment in the O line, and like I said, Freddie, that was 100%. You got it right on the nose from the very beginning. The O line was bad, and Matt Ryan, he was 37. I mean, that's about 73 in quarterback years,
Mm-hmm.
and you're already dealing with a quarterback that is not known for being a mobile quarterback. So I mean, if you have somebody who has cement for feet and he's blocking behind an O line that's basically five wet paper towel rolls last season, I mean, it's going to be a recipe for disaster. It's going to be awful, and that's exactly what it was. So yeah, it was bad. It was very, very bad. But I know you were
Yeah.
going to say something else, Freddie. So I don't want to go too far off the hinge.
I mean, it also felt like with the case of Danny Pinter, when I saw him
Mm-hmm.
playing center, it felt like he was playing better there than when we threw him at right guard.
Mm-hmm.
And then finding out that Will Fries was actually decent playing next to Pinter or Kelly, that I felt like that helped a little towards the end, but it was too little too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we dealt with the O line last year. I think it's just we shuffled the O line more last year than we did even the year before. And I know that we had injuries on the line the year before, but last year was just very patchwork. I mean, you saw anytime that you see guys leave and there's no replacement for them, and mind you, it's just like Pryor came over in a trade from Philadelphia, I believe. And I mean, even Pinter, they were just like, okay, well, yeah, Pinter's playing better at center, but I mean, the way that he was playing at right guard, it's very easy for him to play better at center, because I mean, even then, it just wasn't good. Like I think last year was when we saw Ballard really just get exposed for being too comfortable in his ways, when not really trying or not really going and investing in certain parts of the team that he knew for a fact he needed to. Because every year we talk about the fact that we need an edge rusher, we need an edge rusher. Okay, we got Yannick Ngakoue, fantastic. But there was nothing paid in terms of attention or money into that O line last year. And it showed week in and week out. I mean, Matt Ryan was pretty much a crapshoot on his own, but I mean, that O line was awful. It got to the point where you saw, like, towards the end of the season, the offense on passing plays wasn't passing for more than 15 yards at a time because Matt Ryan didn't have the time to be able to throw the ball, even when he's in shotgun.
Yeah.
So it was like I said, I'm not putting it all on the O line, because at the end of the day, Ballard had the means to be able to fix that O line, and he didn't. And I think that's also part of the reason why JT ended up being hurt last year, because I mean, it just became runs up the middle. Nothing can develop, nothing can progress. And then next thing you know, JT's getting swarmed 2, 3 guys tackling at a time instead of having the better looks that he had the year before.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head, especially talking about Matt Ryan behind that O line. Because in today's NFL, you either need to have a quarterback that can extend plays or you need to
Mm-hmm.
have a dominant offensive line. Ideally, you have both, right? Teams like Philly have both. But if you don't have either, you're fucked. Like point blank,
Yeah.
period. It's not going to end well for you.
Yep.
And when you have Matt Ryan, who, as Chris perfectly illustrated, was essentially a 73-year-old man, at least in quarterback years out there, behind a banged up offensive line that had a rotating turnstile at right guard, a massive
Hmm.
question mark at left tackle. Heck, even Quentin Nelson had a bit of a down year. And I think that was more, him not having guys to be able to feed off of than him himself playing poorly, because the offensive line as a whole is always going to struggle when
Yeah.
you have two, maybe even three guys that aren't playing up to snuff. And so you have this entire group not being what they need to be. You have an immobile quarterback, and you
Hmm.
have a running back who, like you said, because of the offensive line, has to run up the middle every single play and ends up getting hurt. It's a recipe for disaster offensively. You're not going to do anything. I mean,
Yep.
it's a complete wash. And, you know, I'm I'm a big Frank Reich defender, so a lot
Mm.
of that I'm sure that's a little controversial to you guys, but the way I look at it is he didn't get a fair chance quarterback-wise, because he comes in, you don't have anything. You go get him Carson Wentz. He didn't work after a year. You force him out and you bring in Matt Ryan. And on paper, Matt Ryan was probably the quarterback most well equipped to run Frank Reich's offense, because he just needs somebody who's really smart. He doesn't need a physical specimen. He doesn't need somebody who can air the ball out 50 yards downfield. He just needs somebody who can read a defense, get the ball out quickly, and run through his progressions. And that's what Matt Ryan was at that point in his career. And that's why I was so, high on the Colts going into last year, because I was like, okay, he's finally got his point guard. He's finally got the guy that's going to run things. He's got a good running back. You've got some exciting young weapons and guys like Jelani Woods and Alec Pierce, who I'm also a big fan of. And then last year it didn't work, and he got almost, in my opinion, scapegoated. Now it worked out because I think Shane Steichen is perfect for what's going to be happening with the Colts going
Yeah.
forward. But he gets scapegoated, and then the Jeff Saturday experiment happens. And the whole team just, I mean, no offense by this, but became kind of unserious.
Oh
And
yeah.
again,
Yeah.
it worked out because now you've got Anthony Richardson, you've got a bright young head coach, you've got, all the makings of building something great. But last year was just a total wash. And that's my next question for you guys, actually, is I want to know, how did you feel about the whole Jeff Saturday experience, experiment, whatever you want to call it?
I mean, is it bad that we already knew that Jeff Saturday was pretty much just only going to be there, and that we pretty much had given up on the season already? I mean, there
I
there's
mean,
no way that you saw that Jim Irsay. I remember because I was having an issue with my car and I had to go drop off something to my son's school, who's only like 2-3 blocks away. And halfway there, I get the notice that Jeff Saturday is going to be the coach. And I just kind of like look away from my phone and look up. I'm just like, I didn't really just read that. And then I look back at my phone and then I'm just like, yeah, the season's over. This season's over. Like I did like there's you don't you I mean, can we also just allude to the fact that we knew this season was over even before that? Because I know, Dave, as much as you're a Frank Reich enthusiast, he wasn't it.
yeah.
Frank Reich was part of the reason why we went so hard to get Carson Wentz,
Hmm.
and I had no problem with us getting Carson Wentz. I have a problem with what we gave up to get him.
That's fair. That's very
Because
fair.
because I mean, we ended up going 9-8, which honestly is like it was a downgrade from the season before when we had Philip Rivers. So the thing is, all Carson Wentz had to do was either be just as good or maybe be like maybe one game behind what Philip Rivers did the year before. And I mean, you have somebody who, I mean, and he had a pretty decent season, but the thing is, Carson Wentz really showed his Carson Wentz traits when he
For
got
sure.
into games where we can go and we could have won. I mean, Jonathan Taylor pretty much carried the team on his back for the majority of the season, and we still had to kind of put up with that. But then, Carson Wentz also could have cost us the potential to go and maybe get your guy, Justin Fields, who, Ballard said at that time was somebody that he was looking at or somebody that was on his short list. And so, you know, it's just like we kind of had to pay for that. I mean, even Matt Ryan, we had to pay for it. I
Mhm.
mean, I think between Rivers, Jacoby Brissett, Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan, the Colts have collectively paid close to $120 million in quarterback cost over those 3 years. 3 years, and I think that goes without saying that that's utterly fucking ridiculous. Like
Mhm.
it's just it's not good. But now going back to Jeff Saturday, yeah, yeah, that was awful. But you know, we got Shane Steichen now, so I leave the rest to Freddie because I'm not going back to those sad times.
Fair
Okay, I
enough.
I just got over that, so
Fair
I'm only
enough.
going to go but so much. But yeah, yeah,
When I first saw the notification, I thought it was one of those fake Twitter accounts just tweeting something crazy.
yeah, Butt
Then like,
Crack Sports or something.
yeah.
Yes.
Then I'm like, oh shit, this is real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's either time to embrace the tank or just sit back every Sunday once the kickoff happens, crack open a beer, and make the most of it.
Exactly.
That's fair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that whole situation got us Richardson, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I like the outcome. Like I like the outcome much more than everything that happened because at the end of the day, it's like you know it sucked to go through, but at the same time, we were able to see exactly what it was that kind of got us here. I mean, if we don't have a Jeff Saturday, we don't end up with a Shane Steichen. If we don't end up with 4-12-1, we don't end up with an Anthony Richardson, who I believe he at this point I don't think he has a ceiling. Like I think for him, he's just like he has unlimited potential, and he's with a head coach who knows how to coach up quarterbacks that can be mobile, that also can throw, and have all these different traits that make them. I'm going to say at some point or another, not just talented, but just can make them absolute problems on the field.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, again, I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna go against Colts fans, maybe piss some of them off out there. When I saw that Jeff Saturday got hired as the coach of the Colts, my response wasn't "this isn't real" or "what are we doing" or anything like that. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." Um, because Jeff Saturday is one of the smartest football players that has played in my lifetime, right? I've been on this planet 20 years, and you'd be hard pressed to find many football players that were smarter than Jeff Saturday. So
Yeah,
my mind was like, okay, you know what? The season's kind of a wash. You're probably not going anywhere. Best case, you find out Jeff Saturday is a fantastic leader and you run into next year with an established head coach that's already building a culture. Worst
yeah.
case is what happened. You end up
Hmm.
sucking. You get a better head coach. You get a quarterback high in the draft. Like, I saw it as a win-win for the Colts. I didn't see a way where they lost with Jeff Saturday because I didn't really see a world where he was like just enough and maybe did enough for Jim Irsay to feel like there was something there. Um, but no, I absolutely agree. Like in hindsight, Jeff Saturday was horrific. I
Hmm.
should have probably realized hiring a guy whose best experience was in high school, where he wasn't even that good as a coach.
Yeah,
Probably wasn't going to result in anything positive. But like I said, I wanted to believe that something cool would happen with Jeff Saturday because I like Jeff Saturday.
yeah.
But he's just not an NFL coach, at least not right now. Who knows? Maybe he could go be an assistant somewhere and learn some things. I don't know what he's doing with his life right now, but he he wasn't a head coach. That's very apparent.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think what you said, like, and with what you were saying, because Jeff Saturday is absolutely like he has a very, very high football IQ.
mhm.
But it's tough because he walked into a situation where there's a pre-established team.
Yeah.
You kind of have to just go with what it is. But also at the
Mhm.
same time, I think he knew exactly what he was walking into. He accepted the challenge, but I
Mhm.
just don't think that there's any amount of football IQ can prepare you to be successful with the product that was trotted out last season.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just it was bad all around. And I mean, if he would have came in there and utterly turned that team around, let's just say you end up winning the majority of your games, and let's just say you end up being 9-8 or 10-7, by the end of last season, I would have said, get that man a second gold jacket because he needs to be in for coaching too, because there's no way
Right.
possible that you're going to go in with as bad as that team was and just overperform. But it was what we thought it was. And like I
Yeah,
said, it's just like looking back now, it's just like I'm very happy that he was there. I'm sure that he gave Ursay feedback on what he needed to do moving forward with a lot of the guys on the team. So
for sure.
it was like I said, it was a bittersweet time because yeah, we just had to lose and watch bad product every Sunday, but we got what we got now, which is just much more promising.
Absolutely. For sure, without a doubt. But looking at some of the numbers last year, something I've taken a look at deeply in this series is the EPA per play numbers, right?
Hmm.
And you look at the Colts last year, and it's not a pretty sight. I'm going to tell you
Hmm.
right now.
No.
30th in rushing EPA per play,
Hmm.
32nd, dead last in passing EPA per play,
Hmm.
6th in run defense EPA per play. There's something there. You got Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner
Hmm.
on the interior of the defensive line, great linebacker core, even without Shaq Leonard being there. I got one of the more underrated players in the league, EJ Speed, one of my favorite guys to watch week in and week out. Like,
No.
that definitely makes sense. And then 25th in coverage EPA per play. And then looking at points scored, they were 30th in points scored with 289,
Oh
30th
yeah.
in points allowed with 427, and then dead last 32nd in point differential with negative 138.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of those numbers stand out as something that surprised you or reinforced what you saw on the field, or if you just have any thoughts in general there.
I just want to know what two teams put up less points.
The Broncos were one of them,
Okay, that makes sense.
and I can't remember the other one, but I know the Broncos were dead last.
That makes sense. I mean, it's so. I'm gonna say it's just like on offense. I'm sure we rank that last everywhere, but I mean, in terms of coverage, I think that really attributed to those games late in the season, like the games in Minnesota, the game versus the Steelers, games versus the Cowboys. These were all games. I mean, let's go to the Vikings specifically. Basically, shut them out in the first half, and then allow them to basically score 37 for the rest of the game. And I mean, like I said, it's just like Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins came out in the first half and looked like the Kirk Cousins that we all know he is, and then he played the type of Kirk Cousins ball that he should, having the type of team around him that he does. And like I said, even the Cowboys was just an absolute utter collapse. They're passing and just running and doing everything that they were supposed to, but we had an offense that was absolutely anemic, that basically used all their juice, in the first couple drives, and then after that, the defense had to overcompensate. I mean, when you're turning the ball over the way that we did last year, of course the defense is going to pay for it. And teams aren't going to run the ball if they're down. They're going to try to pass it so that they can not only get up, but also make sure that they're securing those leads. I mean, like I said, Minnesota, I think Kirk Cousins had, what, 4 touchdowns by the end of the game?
Around there, yeah.
And he started off with, what, I think 2 or 3 interceptions to begin the game with. So I mean, that's where your balance is. That's what you're looking at. So I'm not surprised by any of those numbers at all. If we're being just completely real about how absolutely terrible everything went last year.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. I'm glad you brought up the Vikings game so I didn't have to be the one to do it. Because, yeah, man, even as someone who's not a fan of the Colts, I felt like secondhand pain watching the back half of that game. And I did watch the back half of that game. I was one of the few people that didn't turn it off when it was a total blowout. I was like, I want to see what happens. The Vikings are
Oh
getting beat
yeah.
up on. I'm a Bears fan. It's fun to watch. I
Hmm.
love it. And then, it unfortunately ended the way it did. But yeah, I don't think it's shocking to anybody to hear those type of numbers when associated with the Colts last year. Because like I said, for lack of better words, it was a very unserious football team.
Yeah.
But, like we've already said, future's bright. There's a lot of change, a lot of new things happening. But one thing that will stay the same is going to be the defense, because Gus Bradley was like the only coach that got retained throughout the new regime. I could be wrong. There might be some assistant that I don't know about, but Gus Bradley's the main one, the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Um, So I'm going to list off the different types of coverages they ran last year. And these are pretty much going to stay the same because Gus Bradley runs his defense a certain way, and I doubt it changes. They did a good job adding guys in the offseason that I think fit in this type of scheme, specifically in the draft with some of the DBs they drafted. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But they were 32nd in cover 0 with 0.1% of their plays ran being cover 0. They were tied for 12th in cover 1 with 22.5%. Tied for 32nd in cover 2 with 6.2%. Tied for 6th in cover 3 with 42.4%. That's Gus Bradley's bread and butter. His favorite thing on this planet is a good old cover 3. They were 13th in quarters with 15.1%. 26th in quarter half with 4.4%. And then tied for 31st in cover 0 with 0%. I don't think, or cover 5, excuse me, with 0%. I don't think they ran any cover 2 man last year. So, like I said, those numbers will mostly stay the same. We've been looking at scheme a lot in these. I like to list those numbers off because it gives you an idea of what was going on last year. Obviously, cover 3 is something that a lot of coaches have started to kind of move away from. Even guys who are like Gus Bradley proteges, guys who have worked under Gus Bradley, don't run it as much. But he sticks to it. He's confident in it. And like I said, they added some guys that I think can run that system pretty well. So we'll have to see what that is next year. But I don't think there's really much else to say about the defense. It was disappointing. They had a good run game. The secondary lost a lot of pieces in the offseason. Lost one of the more important linebackers. Shaq Leonard was hurt last year. It was just very unfortunate. Like I said, though, love EJ Speed. He's out there. He's trucking, one of the more underrated players in football. Love the guy. But looking over at offense, everything I'm about to say is probably going to change. Looking at like the run splits in the passing game. So looking at the type of run plays they ran, very similar to the defense, just listing off the percentages here. They were tied for 19th in outside zone with 20% of their run plays. 3rd in inside zone with 34%. That actually might stay the same because the Eagles ran a lot of inside zone last year. That's very much Shane Steichen-esque, plus Jonathan Taylor. That's like the perfect type of run for him. So that'll probably stay the same. They were tied for 7th in duo with 7% of their runs, or 20% of their runs, excuse me. Tied for 19th in power with 7% of their runs. That's where that 7% came from. Reading is hard. They were tied for 26th in counter with 3% of their runs, tied for 25th in draw with 1% of their runs, and tied for 20th in pin and pull with 4% of their runs. So like I said, I expect the inside zone numbers to stay high. I'd say the outside zone numbers will probably go up. That's probably going to be a lot of what they're running when they're in under center looks, running play action out of that. And then draw numbers will go up as well because a lot of teams in the NFL that run draw essentially just use it for QB draws nowadays. And when you have Anthony Richardson, you're going to be running QB draw a decent bit. And the passing game, I don't even think it's really worth it to list off any of the numbers because they were just horrible. This was the worst pass game in football. But on the bright side, it's going to be better because you bring in Shane Steichen. He, at the very least, knows how to make an offense simplified for a quarterback, knows how to make the reads a lot easier, knows how to get the ball downfield a lot. And he's got arguably the most physically gifted quarterback ever who has a rocket of an arm to get the ball downfield. So that's my next question for you guys. Just completely ignoring what happened on offense last year. We already talked about that. What are your expectations for the offense this year with Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson at the helm?
I mean, it'll definitely be better than last year, but that's not saying much. But I really do think it'll be a pretty run-heavy offense and just something simplified just so Richardson could get comfortable in the NFL.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset. I think this year you're going to see just, I'm going to say, probably small portions of what we can expect to see from Anthony Richardson in the future, right? Because everything that we're going to see, that's why I'm very heavily on the, JT is going to be back and he's going to, play a full season this year because, I think what we're going to see, especially when it comes to Anthony Richardson is that no matter whether he's a rookie or not, he's the starter, which means that teams are going to have to account for him. You're going to have to account for him on QB scrambles. You're going to have to make sure that you're, keeping an eye out for him. Like if you don't have a QB spy on him, there's a good chance that he's probably going to make you pay. And while I don't think that he's just going to come out and then just automatically pass for 300 and then run for 100 yards every single game. I think you're going to see a lot of those plays that you would expect them to, because like I said, my predictions so far have been he doesn't throw more than 30 passes a game this season, like in any game. And so I think you're going to see a lot of the RPO. You might see some Wildcat. You might see, I'm going to say you're going to see a lot of option because you have Jonathan Taylor, who people are going to have to account for because no matter whether he got hurt last year or not, when he played a full season before, he was a league leading rusher with 1,800 yards, and he had an additional, I think, 300 to 400 catching. So, I mean, you're going to have to account for more than one person back there. And then it's also the fact that you have Michael Pittman at 6'4" on the outside, Alec Pierce at 6'4", who actually has sneaky good speed. And then you have Isaiah McKenzie, who can be like your slot guy, or even Josh Downs, who has like remarkable footwork, if we're being real. So I think that the offense is going to be able to show that they can actually play very, very well. I don't have super lofty expectations. I'm not going to say that I expect Richardson to throw for 4,000 this year, but I do think what you're going to see is that you're going to have guys go out there and establish. I think Michael Pittman is going to have to go out there and establish the fact that he's wide receiver one the way that people don't believe he's wide receiver one. Even though I feel like he's wide receiver one, but I think this is going to be the year that he actually gets to fully prove that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the big thing, like you said, it's not going to be what it's meant to be right away, right? Like this is going to be a few-year process. I would say at least 2, maybe 3 years, where you really have to build up Anthony Richardson. I'm someone who's of the mindset that he isn't nearly as raw as what people want to make him out to be. I think he's got a really good base to work off of outside of the athletic tools, like in the mental side of the game. And we'll talk about him more when we get to the draft. But like, I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. And like you said, there's going to be a lot of option. There's going to be a lot of RPOs. That's really what Shane Steichen, builds his offense around. And we saw what that did for Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson, who was a far more physically gifted player than Jalen Hurts, I think can really thrive in this situation. Like Jonathan Taylor, he's going to be a great complement to him. The run game's going to be deadly, whether it's Jonathan Taylor running the ball, Anthony Richardson running the ball, somebody else running the ball, whoever. The run game's going to be great. And then in the passing game, you have pieces that, while not exactly the same as what they had in Philly, I think can play a similar role. Like Michael Pittman, as you mentioned, really has to solidify himself as that number one guy. And I think he's going to be doing a lot of the same stuff that they asked A.J. Brown to do. He's a bigger body, more physical guy that, in the short to intermediate game is going to do a great job of boxing out DBs on zig routes and slants and inside breaking routes. And then downfield, I think he's somebody that you can rely on to haul in a 50-50 ball or make a tough catch on the sideline. And that's going to be something that's huge for them because Anthony Richardson, like I said, has a rocket of an arm. And we saw last year that's something that they relied on a lot in Philadelphia, was using Jalen Hurts' arm and A.J. Brown's ability to catch the ball downfield to really stretch the field. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think Alec Pierce, who you mentioned is somebody that's sneaky athletic, I think we're going to see him almost take on like a Quez Watkins role, not in the sense, not in the sense that like he's the same type of player as Quez Watkins, but where he's somebody that can take the top off the defense and really make plays downfield. And you're going to draw it up where you have an RPO almost that, if you have a single high safety, if he comes down, Alec Pierce is taken off and you ask Anthony Richardson to toss it up to him. If he stays back, you hand the ball off, like that type of thing, right? I'm not saying they're the same player by any means, or they're even really comparable. It's just the role. And then you mentioned Josh Downs, somebody that as a North Carolina fan, I am a massive fan of. I think he's going to be great for you guys. Isaiah McKenzie, super fun gadget guy. Obviously, you're going to be able to do so many things with all of the moving pieces on this offense. And that's not even getting into my favorite piece on your offense, who's Jelani Woods. He's somebody that, we saw a lot of hype for Darnell Washington coming out of Georgia this year. Jelani Woods is just a more fluid Darnell Washington. Like, people don't talk enough about how much of a freak this guy is. And we saw bits and pieces of him playing well last year. Now, obviously, he had inconsistent moments. I'm not putting a lot of that on him. It was a really bad situation for a rookie to be in at any position.
Yeah.
So I think with Anthony Richardson, and we saw how big of a piece Dallas Goedert was in Philadelphia's offense, I think Jelani Woods can absolutely do what Goddard was doing. He has the athleticism, he has the ability to run routes, he has all of that Dallas Goedert has, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do there. So I think the offense next year, even if it's not perfect, is going to have moments where you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be something special. When you see Anthony Richardson haul off a 60-yard pass to Michael Pittman or hit Jelani Woods 10 yards downfield and he takes it for another 40. Like, there's going to be some exciting stuff next year. Is it going to be consistent? Maybe not, but you're going to see the flashes of what you want to see, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue that they're going to, I think that people are having right now with talking about the offense is the fact that you're talking about the offense from a perspective that you're talking about Anthony Richardson and coming in and then just automatically doing, all these Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type things where they're expecting him to just be a passer all the time. And that's not why you have an Anthony Richardson right now, right? It's just like you got him because you know that he has an arm and you know that he'll be able to, frequently go ahead and potentially throw up those 50-50 balls to wide receivers who, the average quarterback is about 5'10", 5'11".
Mm-hmm.
Both wide receiver 1 and arguably wide receiver 2 right now have a 5-inch advantage over just about any cornerback that they're going to be facing this season. So, you do have that capability, but once again, it's just like I think you use Anthony Richardson in a way that's as balanced as possible, but you're just going to lean on the run more than anything else. The run is going to be a rookie QB's best friend until he transitions into being that full-time quarterback that can potentially go and throw, 250 to 300 yards per game and, just be able to go ahead and take over a game even if the run game isn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. But transitioning out of last season, finally, let's talk about the offseason, because I think the Colts did a lot of fun stuff this offseason. But unfortunately, as with every team, they did suffer some losses. A couple guys are leaving Indianapolis. So out of this group of free agents that left the Colts, which one hurts you the most? Whether that's, you think they're going to have the biggest, or their presence being gone is going to be felt the most, or it's just a player you really like that you're sad to see go.
All right. So this is actually not even a free agency thing, but I'm just going to say it. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I think Isaiah Rodgers is probably like one of the guys that I'm very, very, very upset about because I also do a podcast that's strictly just for Colts fans, whatever. And for the last few years, I've frequently been talking about how Isaiah Rodgers, it should be getting more burn in this defense. I mean, even last year when we had Brandon Facison that Gus Bradley basically brought over from, the Raiders, where he was a cornerback 5 over there, and they made him like starting opposite of, not starting opposite, but basically had him playing like he could actually be a starting quarterback, and just got toasted all season. Meanwhile, Isaiah Rodgers, when he had those opportunities to come in, he was, making tackles. I think one of the most notable things that he did was in a game against the Titans. Brandon Facison, they got a run to the outside. I'm going to say it's just like an outside sweep. And Derrick Henry ran to the outside. Facison got stiff-armed into oblivion, and then Derrick Henry runs for a touchdown. But then the Titans, on the very next drive, run the same type of play, and Isaiah Rodgers gets Derrick Henry in the backfield. And to me, it's just like that was like those were the plays that I think really just showed that he should have been, he should have had the position over him. But then to see that he got caught up in the mess that he got caught up in is just like super disappointing. It was sad to see because, like I said, I think that he had the opportunity this year, especially with having younger guys at cornerback like Brents and like Rush. He had the opportunity to really just stand out and show that he can be like a CB2. But hopefully he learns from this and possibly ends up back in the league. But yeah, it that I'm still trying to pull the knife out from my heart because of Isaiah Rodgers. So yeah, I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris pretty much said it perfectly, but just to mention someone different, for me, Paris Campbell. I actually wound up going to the Giants Colts game in MetLife, and just that sick catch he had in, I believe it was the first quarter where he went up and just got the ball.
Yeah.
That's just the one bright spot from last year for me. And it sucks that now all my friends that are Giants fans, I'm telling them if he's healthy, he's going to put up numbers this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that type of offense, he absolutely can. Brian Dable can make any receiver look fantastic. And that's not a slight at Paris Campbell. I'm saying he's made receivers that
Yeah.
are worse than him look good. So
Oh yeah.
I'm sure he will look pretty good in the Giants next year, or on the Giants next year, rather. Running through a couple of the other losses here, obviously the team traded away Stephon Gilmore, which name value wise seems like a big loss for the Colts. I don't think it is, just because he didn't seem to ever really fit with what you guys were doing. Schematically, he should have, but I don't know. It's just like he never quite meshed and adapted to Gus Bradley and his defense and all that. So I don't think that's a huge loss. Bobby Okereke, one of my favorite linebackers in football.
Yeah.
It hurts, but I think, fourth time I'm mentioning him, I think EJ Speed can step up into the role he was playing and really take over and be that LB2 to complement Shaq Leonard. So I don't think it's the end of the world there either. Not to say that he's not a good player. It's just, I think his role will be filled. Yannick Ngakoue now with my Chicago Bears. Not somebody that did a whole lot for the Colts. He was only there for a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, somebody that's consistently going to get you sacks, but it's not like he was some world beater that you couldn't replace. I think you guys did a good job replacing him. And I think that's kind of the overall, like, story with the Colts offseason is they lost a lot of guys, but they did a good job replacing them with players that are as good, if not better than them. But some of the other names here, Brandon Faceyson, Rodney McLeod, Matt Pryor, Brian Cowart, Christian Wilkerson, Ben Benogo. I'm not sure how you say his
Banago.
name.
Yeah,
Benigo? Okay. Thank you. I am terrible with names. I will tell you straight up. I am horrible with names. I have to say it at least once an episode because I butcher somebody's name. Defensive tackle Chris Williams, punter Matt Hack, kicker Chase McLaughlin, who again I thought was a big upgrade with getting Matt Gay to replace him. Cameron Klein, Devontae Price, Nicola Kalen, Armani Watts, Dennis Kelly, and Nick Foles. So like not a lot of big names, and the ones that were kind of big names, I think, again, good job of replacing them. So it's not the end of the world. Retained free agents, again, EJ Speed, he's coming back on a pretty solid deal. I think he's getting paid like $4 million a year, which is really, really good for the Colts. Carter O'Donnell, the offensive tackle, running back Deion Jackson, a couple edge rushers, and Khalid Kareem and Tony Brown, and Tyquan Lewis, and then wide receiver Ashton Doolin. So again, nothing crazy there, just some solid depth keeping around. And then we get to free agency, and I got to ask, who was your free agent or favorite free agent signing from the Indianapolis Colts this offseason?
I gotta say Gardner Minshew, just because I feel like he's a great mentor for Richardson to help him learn the Steichen offense a lot quicker than if you would have had, let's say, Sam Ellinger back him up and not have someone familiar with the offense to teach the rookie.
Yeah.
Great point.
I'm pretty much there with him. Chris Ballard just once again is just like he went the bargain bin Ballard way in free agency, where he just goes and I mean the if we're being completely real, his biggest signing was signing Matt Gay. And I mean, when your biggest signing is a kicker, it's like I get it, but at the same time, it's like we know you're cheap. You don't have to keep showing us you're cheap though. Like that's just what it is. But I mean, we're coming off of an off season where it's just like we had previously signed Stephon Gilmore and Yannick Ngakoue, and then Matt Gay was our big signing. But I think for what it means to the team, definitely Gardner Minshew, because I mean I've officially jumped on the Gardner Minshew bandwagon because I mean he was training with Anthony Richardson before this, and then once he signed, then he's just like, hey, I'm here to compete, but that's also my guy. So as much as I can teach, I can go ahead and show him things, but then also I'm here to compete for that QB1 job. And to me, that's very, very underrated when it comes to having that, because you don't have somebody who's going to sabotage you, but you also have somebody where if they see that something's up with you and they see that, yeah, this is not the way that you should do this, you should try it this way. If you have somebody who's trying to aid in your progression, especially with somebody like Richardson, who is, trying to learn as much as possible, asking as many questions as he is, to have somebody like that, like I said, I think we can use Ryan Tannehill, for example. When they drafted Malik Willis, he's like, I'm not here to mentor anybody. I'm here to play the game. I'm here to be the starting QB. So, like I said, to see Gardner Minshew come in and just say, hey, like I said, that's my guy. I'm gonna help him, but I'm also here to compete. That was like, okay, yeah, we got ourselves a winner. Like, I would love to have him the way that Peyton Manning had Jim Sorgi for all those years back in the day. Like, he just ends up just being his QB2 the whole entire rest of his career, because that to me is something that is really going to help that evolution and progression of Anthony Richardson in his game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was perfectly put. Honestly, I love it. I love Gardner Minshew getting some love. He's one of the, most fun players in the league.
Oh, yeah.
Just a cool guy. And obviously, like you said, great mentor for Anthony Richardson, was a mentor for Jalen Hurts, knows this offense very well. Just nothing to dislike about that move, right?
No, at all.
No.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that I only ever didn't like him is because he was on the Jags. That's the only reason why I just ever didn't like him. I mean, this man shotgunned the Gatorade before. I was just like,
right.
God, it's hard not to like this guy. It's really hard not to like him. But I can't root
Shotgun
for him
and
because he's on the
Gatorades, the
Jags.
mullet, the jorts. I mean, he's got everything.
Yeah, it's like, man, this guy seems like the most fun at parties. But he was also on the Jags, so I had no choice but to hate him. But yeah,
I get it.
Gardner Minshew is Gardner Minshew is one of a kind.
That's how I feel about Dan Campbell as a Bears fan. Like, even though I can't bring myself to hate Dan Campbell, I don't think anyone could, but I get the feeling where you want to love him. You want him to like, just, you understand how fun and how cool of a person he is, but he's on a rival. So that little part of you is like, God, it's tough. I get it. One free agent signing I thought was actually pretty underrated for the Colts was Samson Ebukam, the edge rusher coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah. I think he's somebody that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. He's somebody that he's weird because he's super aggressive, yet he shows a lot of discipline, especially against the run, where, he has a great nose for the ball. He always knows where the play is. He knows where it's going. He's going to make as many plays as possible. Now, like I said, he is over aggressive. So there are going to be times where he, gets a little over eager and misses something. But I think it's going to be really fun to see what Gus Bradley cooks up with him specifically on stunts, because obviously we've seen him get really creative with guys like DeForest Buckner, lining him out on the edge and then looping him inside. And you have DeForest Buckner as a super athletic defensive tackle. You have Ebukam, who's this defensive end that is great on stunts. And I think having the two of them and then some of the other athletes like Adetomiwa Adebawore or Deo, however you say his last name.
Yep.
Thank you. You've got all these athletic guys on the defensive line that, can move around and keep the offensive line on their toes. And I think that's going to be super fun. And then obviously Isaiah McKenzie too is a really fun gadget guy. I'm excited to see what Shane Steichen's going to cook up with him. Some of the other names that you guys brought in, tight end Pharaoh Brown, defensive tackle Taven Bryan, another former Jaguar, linebacker Jannard Avery, wide receiver Brashad Perriman, who was on the Bears for like 2 minutes at one point, had to throw that out there. Offensive lineman Dakota Shepley, and then obviously kicker Matt Gay, who, as Chris said, is pretty much the biggest signing that the Colts made. But hey, I can tell you right now, there have been times in my life where I wish the biggest thing the Bears did was bring in a kicker. So it's not something you can complain too much about. But like you said, Chris Ballard is kind of cheap.
He is.
Yeah. But I think he made up for being cheap this offseason by absolutely knocking the draft out of the park. Yeah. Like, we see a lot of people hyping up the Eagles draft and the Steelers draft, but I think the Colts draft is just as good, if not better, than what they did. Like, I was blown away by some of the value they got, especially down the board. But before we jump into the class as a whole, outside of Anthony Richardson, because I know having a guy you feel like is a franchise quarterback is great, who was your favorite draft pick from the Colts this year?
For me, Josh Downs. That's the one receiver I wanted because I saw that just his fit with Pittman and Pierce would just make a lot of sense in the offense. Because all the receivers, it felt like the past couple of years were these big, tall guys who were just go up and get the ball guys. And then you just mix in a guy like Downs, who's more of like a shifty guy, throw him in the slot. I think it'll just create more balance in the passing game.
And hell, he's a guy who can go up and get the ball too. He had a 78% contested catch rate his senior year or his final year in college, whatever it was. Like, I love the dude. I'm a big Josh Downs fan.
Yeah, he plays a lot more. He plays a lot taller than what he is. Like he's
for sure.
He's a 5'10" receiver that almost plays like he's like 6'3".
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm gonna say I'm always very much on the side of just like I like defense a little bit more than I like offense. So I'm gonna say the biggest pickup that I think for us in the draft was Juju Brents.
Oh, okay.
I loved Brents because he's a good fit. He's 6'1". He has like pretty decent speed, but then also he plays super physical. And not just that, but Gus Bradley, the way that he likes to run his defense, he plays a lot of cover 3, but he thrives when he has those taller cornerbacks. And it's just I think that's another reason why maybe Kenny Moore didn't fit in last year, because Kenny Moore, for as good as he plays, is still 5'9". But I mean, Juju Brents is a guy who's like that. I think one guy that we got a chance to see a flash from over the weekend was Darius Rush, who's 6'2", and who's an absolute burner on the outside. So I was very, very happy with Brents, but then also to loop back and then go get Rush later was like, oh, they're taking this serious now.
Yeah, no, I think both of those corners are fantastic. Like Darius Rush, obviously all eyes were on Cam Smith during the pre-draft process. A lot of people were looking at him as a first-round talent. I didn't quite see that, but I did like Cam Smith a lot. But Rush, I don't think was that far off from him in terms of talent. Like, I agree that Rush and Brents are both perfect fits for Bradley's defense. And I love Brents because he's a corner that's not afraid to hit somebody in the run game, and that always warms my heart. So you get those two, and you get Jalen Jones further down the board. Like the way they attacked their cornerback room this offseason after everything that happened, right? You lose Isaiah Rodgers, you lose Stephon Gilmore, Kenny Moore looked like he didn't quite fit in the defense, as you mentioned. I like how aggressive they went at corner in the draft, and they got some guys that outside of Jalen Jones, I was really high on. I thought where they took Jalen Jones was fine value. Like he went a little bit lower than I thought he would, but I was also a little bit lower on him than most people. So it ended up working out. But the pick that stands out to me the most is Adetomiwa Adebawore, the edge rusher and defensive tackle, whatever you want to call him, out of Northwestern. He was somebody that I was pounding the table for my Chicago Bears to draft, starting all the way back when he went crazy at the combine. Like, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't in on it before everybody else or anything. I caught on when everybody else caught on. And I sat down, I watched the tape, and I was like, holy shit, this guy is not real. I mean, watching Adebawore at Northwestern was like watching an alien disguised as a human. The way he moves at his size is unreal. And normally when you have a guy that's on the defensive line like that, that's really quick, they aren't necessarily the best run defender because they're usually slimmer guys. And you look at Adebawore, he was arguably the best run defender in this class across the defensive line. Like I was blown away by how good he was. And as a pass rusher, sure, he needs a little bit of development there, but it's still enough where you're like, okay, he's a plus run defender. He's an absurd athlete. He's got good size. He can play inside. He can play outside. Why would you not take him before day 3, before the 4th round? I am so shocked that he fell as far as he did. I was, like I said, I knew the Bears were going to trade down pretty early. I was hammering for them to trade down again after they traded with the Panthers and take him at like 17, 18, in the mid 1st round. You guys get him in the 4th round, and it blew my mind. I think he's going to be an absurd piece for you guys. He's someone that's play inside and outside, something that's going to be big, especially on passing downs, because obviously as great as Grover Stewart is as a run defender, he's not the best pass rusher. So on obvious passing downs, 3rd and long, things like that, you take him off the field, you put Atabare in at 3 tech, or you bring in whoever else and let Atabare play on the edge. You just get this fantastic, versatile, athletic freak of a chess piece at an insane value. Like I said, in the 4th round is crazy. I thought getting Josh Downs in the 3rd round was crazy too. I thought he was the 3rd best receiver in this class. Like, the value that the Colts found in this class blew my mind. And I think Atabare was the biggest example of that.
Yeah.
But
And we just talked about we just talked about free agency and everything, and it's the inactivity in free agency this year extremely frustrating, but the draft made up for it.
For sure.
Because I mean, you have 12 guys who were drafted, and I mean, even if, let's just say, if only 2/3 of that whole entire draft class works out, then you have 8 solid guys who could potentially be starters or just be like backups to, whoever. I mean, honestly, I think at some point or another, we'll probably see Brenton Rush probably be like at 2 and 3 for corner. We may even see Will Mallory coming in if for some reason he plays. And then, like, everything that I've complained about over the last few years, I'll address. And I mean, it's just like he addressed corner. I mean, he addressed wide receiver because Downs was just chef's kiss. I mean, and then he also addressed O-line. The only thing that I think he didn't address was linebacker. But I mean, honestly, I think he has a pretty solid core. I just think it was this draft made up for all the free agencies that I wish he would have done something.
For sure. Yeah. And surely the crown jewel of this draft has got to be Anthony Richardson. So just as a whole, how do you feel knowing that he's your quarterback of the future?
And I just feel great knowing that we're finally getting caught up to the modern times at the quarterback position, having just someone who could do something besides stand there in the pocket, read the defense, and throw the ball.
Yes.
I just really think that between everyone just being on the same page in terms of wanting Richardson in Indianapolis, Richardson wanting to be there, I think it's a great fit and hopefully a recipe for long-term success.
Yeah, absolutely. Freddy's 100% right. I mean, we've done this QB carousel thing for years where, we had, and I'm not going to say his name, but we had he who shall not be named who, retired on us unexpectedly. And, it's just like we had to, Brissett wasn't bad, but, he didn't have that. Phillip Rivers actually played pretty well, but he was another guy who was ancient, really just didn't have it in him. And then you had Carson Wentz, I think Carson Wentz was just a project because he had a good year, and then they were just like, well, he had one good year, so we can get that out of him. And I think Richardson is everything that you need for this era of quarterback play, where quarterbacks now they're multiple threat. They can run the ball, they can pass. It's just like you have to account for them. Like, having a quarterback that makes defenses have to play differently is a blessing, because now it's just like he has the potential to just not just be good at one thing. And when you're going up against the Tennessee Titans defenses of the world, or you're going up against, even I think this year we play the AFC North, but you're going up against AFC North defenses of the world, you have to have some type of versatility.
For sure.
And, I think he's going to bring a lot of that versatility that we've been missing for a very, very long time, which is the reason why JT just needs to get his stuff together. But I'll leave the rest to Freddy.
Yeah, I think just everything as a whole with this offense, bring in Richardson, hopefully JT gets his stuff together. Even if he doesn't, Moss looked good the final 4 games of last year. I just think overall the future's very bright, and hopefully we see some flashes this year of what the future will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I can, speak from experience what it's like watching a mobile quarterback in an offense with a good running game that isn't necessarily fully developed as a passer, right? Because like I said earlier on, I think Anthony Richardson's a lot further along than people want to make it out to be. I don't think he's a complete project or anything like that, but he still has some work to do. Justin Fields was the same way last year, right? But we still saw the Bears were in a lot of football games. Despite being 3-14, they were in almost every game they played because of how defenses had to read and react to Justin Fields. So you take a guy with that athletic ability, put him in Cam Newton's body, and tell a defense to stop it, they're going to say, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Exactly.
And then 2 years from now, when Anthony Richardson has all the passing down and Shane Steichen has him operating like Jalen Hurts, it's like you just plucked a 99 overall quarterback out of Madden with fully maxed stats, put him in real life and said, go stop that. And it's not going to happen. And, you talk about all the exciting offensive pieces around him and the coaching staff that's being built up and the young defensive pieces, as well as some of the veterans there. Like Anthony Richardson really can turn this Colts team around and be the first quarterback since I'll go with Chris's he who shall not be named. I didn't know we had some animosity towards him. But
there's no animosity, but I can't keep on bringing up those memories. We got
I get you. Okay.
Move on.
It's a healing process thing. I got you.
Exactly,
That's fair. Trust me, I know that all too well. Granted, the quarterback that I tried to heal from wasn't nearly as good as him, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, the Colts can be such an exciting team. And the great thing about Anthony Richardson is the AFC, you have all these, for lack of better words, like super weapon quarterbacks with guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. And now Anthony Richardson, like Chris said early on, has, technically speaking, a higher ceiling than all of them in a certain way. Because none of them have they all have similar arms in terms of arm strength, but none of them have the athletic ability that Anthony Richardson does. I mean, literally, he has Justin Fields and Mike Vick's athletic ability put into Cam Newton's body.
Yes.
And that's, again, it's kind of unfair. Like, there's got to be 31 GMs hoping, okay, for the love of Christ, please do not let this kid work. Please do not let this kid, do whatever. But I have a lot of confidence that he's going to work out. I think Shane Steichen's going to work miracles with him. And at the very least, the Colts are going to have one of, if not the most exciting quarterback in football for years to come if he can pan out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if there's anything that is, I'm going to say reassuring for me, it's the fact that Shane Steichen was really able to do what he did with Jalen Hurts last year.
Sure.
Now, mind you, there's other things in play. It's just like you had an A.J. Brown, you have a Devontae Smith, you have a Quez Watkins, you have that running back committee with Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, you have Dallas Goedert, you have the O-line. But I think that's the reason why, like, the outlook on this team isn't that, oh, yeah, we need to get it right this year, or, it's going to never be right. I think when they drafted Anthony Richardson this year, they drafted Anthony Richardson knowing that it wasn't a project, but it was more so that you know what you're getting. You're getting somebody who you're going to be coaching up and that you're going to make sure that you have the right pieces around. Now, if you go through this year and the O-line doesn't perform the way you would like them to, then you know that next year you can be aggressive and go after O-line. You know that if for some reason you want to get, a Tyreek Hill speed piece at wide receiver, possibly from the draft or from somewhere else, then you know that you can get that. I think this year is going to be really just seeing where a lot of pieces on this team are, or seeing where a lot of these players are. And I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. could potentially have the best year of his career. And, they're going to say, oh, yes, that's our wide receiver one. That's our guy. Or he can do worse than he did last year. And they're just going to be like, well, you know what? There's no reason to go ahead and re-sign him to a contract because he's only proven that he can only do as well as, 1,000 some yards like he did 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
So I don't, like I said, that's the reason why, and I might be jumping the gun here, but that's why even my prediction now, like if you see me on any podcast, you see me anywhere talking about it on Twitter or in groups or X now, stupid. But but if you see anything that I'm saying, it's just like, oh yeah, they're just like, oh yeah, Colts fans think that they're gonna go 11 and 6. I'm just like, I didn't say anything like that. I said 6 and 11. I said 6-11 for that because that means you're 2 games better than you were the year before, and then you go into the next offseason and you know that you're building towards potentially being even better the following season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the big thing. Like you mentioned, is you're drafting Anthony Richardson knowing that he's not a project, but the rest of the team is. Like again, I know a lot of people think he is. He's not. He is a lot further along in his development with the mental side of the game than people want to think. And I know I've already said that, but I want to keep reiterating it because people need to realize this now. He is not Malik Willis. He is not some complete dart throw on athleticism. He's a lot closer to a Justin Fields coming out than someone like Malik Willis or someone like, whoever else you want to say. I guess Malik Cunningham is another super athletic guy, but even then, he's doesn't hold a hair to Anthony Richardson. Like, I get that he's unexperienced. I get that he had a bad first preseason game. I get all that. I don't care. The guy's not raw. He is no more raw than any other quarterback prospect, especially in this class outside of Bryce Young. And when you draft a guy like that, you have to build up the offensive line around him. Obviously, there's going to need to be changes made there. The run game, you're going to have to see what goes on with Jonathan Taylor. The receiver room, like you said, you got to evaluate Michael Pittman, see what happens with him. I think you've got some great young guys that are going to be around for a little while, or at least a little while, with Alec Pierce and Jelani Woods and Josh Downs. I think they're all going to be fantastic. I think they're all going to pan out for you guys. I'm a big fan of all three of them. And then the defense, you're going to have to start looking at the defensive line here soon. DeForest Buckner isn't getting any younger. The edge rushers aren't exactly there yet, depending on what happens with Atabare, what he develops into. Linebacker core, you're going to have to start making moves there. The secondary, like I said, there's this huge turnover. Like, there's a lot of projecting everywhere else on this team and a lot of building to be done. But if there's one thing I'm confident in, it's the future of the quarterback position for the Colts. I really do think Anthony Richardson is going to be something special.
Yeah, and I think there's a coach in place that's going to make sure that they're good.
For sure.
I think and the position coaches that they have, Reggie Wayne as a wide receiver coach has been underrated since he came on last year. Tony Sperano Jr. is out there now. And son of the great, rest in peace, Tony Sperano, who I think for a lot of years was just like a great O-line coach as well, and great offensive coach. But, I mean, you have Nate Ollie, you have Gus Bradley, and I always forget the cornerback coach's name, but it's just like I think he's going to be good, especially with having some rookies there. So, I think it's really just going to be it's going to be a different team. It's going to be a complete team aspect. And like I said, I think that the team will be better than expected or better than what teams expect us to, because, I mean, I've seen a lot of places, they have analysts saying that we're going to be like 3 to 4 wins, but I just don't see that being the case.
I don't necessarily see that either. I'm with you there. But just to run through some of these other draft picks, because they did draft a lot of players. Other 4th round pick, Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle out of BYU, just taking a flyer on a super athletic tackle. Can't be mad at that. The upside's great there. They took another athletic tackle and Jake Witt at the end of the draft, somebody that I think his upside is just as high as Blake Freeland's. So I'm excited to see what those two are going to do. Daniel Scott, another super athlete from California. Not a guy that I liked a lot because his tackling worries me, but in terms of athleticism, he was one of the more athletic safeties in the class. Will Mallory, who Chris mentioned earlier, another guy I'm not super big on, but you are, gambling on athleticism, 5th round pick. Sure, it works. Like, I don't know. I see a tight end that's not a good blocker and had a low contested catch percentage, and I don't get excited, but he creates separation, and he's going to be tight end 2 behind Jelani Woods at best. So who knows? He can turn into some sort of weapon potentially there. Evan Hall out of Northwestern, a guy I liked a lot just because he's like a really consistent, tough runner. Not super flashy, not somebody that's going to like be a superstar, but he can absolutely be like a Boston Scott for you guys. As like somebody who just comes in, changes up the pace a little bit, keeps Jonathan Taylor fresh, comes in on passing downs. He's really instinctive in the passing game. He's a solid pass blocker, just like your stereotypical scat back, 3rd down back type of guy. Titus Leo, I'm going to be honest, my knowledge on him is very limited. I just know, once again, super athlete. Outside of that, what I know is kind of non-existent because I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch any Wagner film. That was not something that was on my radar.
It wasn't on
I think
anybody's radar for being
right. I was going to
like
say, as it probably wasn't on most people's radar. And I think that about covers everybody because we already talked about Jalen Jones. So as a whole, like when I did my draft grades, the video, I haven't uploaded it yet, but it'll be uploaded by the time this goes up. I gave the Colts an A+ for what they did in the draft. Like they blew me away. I love what they did. Going big on athleticism was huge because you go out and you get this athletic freak at quarterback and you're like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's get athletic freaks everywhere else too and see what happens. And if one of Jake Witt or Blake Freeland, can turn into anything, that's going to be huge as well. Because like you said, you were really struggling with left tackle last year with Matt Pryor, and then Bernard Ryman had his struggles early on. So that's something that'll be interesting to monitor. But just kind of jumping away from that and looking at next year, Chris already, like you said, did jump the gun a little bit, but that's totally fine. Looking at next year for the Colts, this is a 2-part question. Who are you most excited to watch? And you can't say Anthony Richardson because that's cheating. And what do you think the Colts record's going to look like next year? If you don't have an exact number, you can give me a floor and a ceiling or something like that. But just what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to say if there's a player that I'm really excited to see something from, and it's only because I really just want to shut, the detractors up. I'm really excited to see Michael Pittman because I really do feel like last year is being used against him when it was just an all-time bad year all around. I think this is somebody who showed those flashes that are in his season with Carson Wentz, playing against those top defenses like the Ravens, like the 49ers, and really just going and just like week in and week out showing like, hey, I can be, wide receiver 1. And then just having last year be as bad as it was, where he was pretty much just confined to slants for like a good portion of the season because of how bad everything was. So for me, I'm very excited for Michael Pittman Jr. to just go out and just really just prove everybody wrong, and prove that he can be the number 1 guy, and prove that he's worthy of just being called that. Just so everybody will just shut up about like not call about like him just being like a wide receiver 2 or whatever.
Right.
Me and Chris are on the same page with Pittman. With me, I see him as like, I do see him as this number 1, but I feel like his best skill is you get him the ball and say, run. He doesn't have that crazy speed, but he runs to me a lot like his dad did when he played in the NFL. And just running like a running back at his size, that can get exciting.
For sure.
And overall, I do see the Colts around 6 to 7 wins this year.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm probably in the same boat there with the win total. I'd say at worst they win 5 games, at most maybe 10. But I think 7 is a pretty solid, pretty reasonable estimation there. 6 or 7 rather is pretty solid, pretty reasonable. As for me, the player I'm most excited to watch, it's tough because even as someone who's not a Colts fan, there's a lot of really exciting young players on this team. So as much as I want to go with old reliable and just say EJ Speed, I got to talk about somebody else. I've talked way too much about EJ Speed. I think for me, it's got to be Adebawore. Like I said, the dude is a freak of nature, and he was somebody that I was such a big fan of. I remember when the Bears were talking to him at his pro day at Northwestern, I was like, okay, this is the guy. Because you guys know, Matt Eberflus, the biggest piece on his defense is the 3 technique. And I was really excited at the prospect of Adebawore coming in and playing 3 tech for the Bears. And then obviously the Bears didn't seem that interested in him, went a different route at defensive tackle. Whether that'll work out is yet to be seen. But I love Adebawore. He's such a freak. He's such a stud. Plus, like, I'm somebody who's kind of corny and is kind of a sucker for like the little goofy things with players. So just the name Adetomiwa Adebawore is such a cool name. And it's a name that I can't help but root for. So, like I said, I'm someone who sucks with names, and I have gone out of my way to learn how to say the dude's name. So that should tell you how much I like him.
If he ends up doing like popping off at any point during the season, like he gets in the game and he just gets a sack or he just causes like a sack fumble, they're gonna give him some ridiculous name, like double A battery or like
Oh
Energizer,
my God,
something
yeah.
like that. Like they're gonna give him some kind of crazy nickname, and I'll be completely here for it because
Mhm.
I like
I was
I
gonna
live.
say because we got to get something cooler than Adi Adi. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of
Yeah.
funny, but we need something better.
yeah. No. They're gonna call him like Duracell or like Energizer just
I'm all
because they're gonna
for it.
call him like a
I'm here
double
for
A
it.
type of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're going to be. I'm calling it now. I'm calling it now.
No, I hope you're right. I think that's awesome. I would love any sort of double A battery theme nickname for the guy because he's a stud. He deserves something cool. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention once again Shalani Woods because I love me a freaky tight end, and that's what that dude is.
Yeah.
But all that being said, I think that about wraps us up here. Before we go, if you guys would like to plug anything, the floor is yours, and I'll make sure to put it in the link in the description down below.
Yeah, so we have we're part of the Fan Battle Sports Network series of podcasts. But we have like the AFC South Fan Battle podcast that goes I think it's gonna start going on Mondays now that football is officially back. And you can catch me on Tuesdays on the Horseshoe Mob podcast at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. So yeah, so if you're there, tune in. Like I said, we like to have people on during the season. I will say, depending on when it is, Dave would love to have you giving us doing the analysis of the game after Saturday's game versus the Bears.
Yeah, you let me know when you plan on doing that, and I'll try to free up my schedule.
Yeah, we
I'd
we go on.
absolutely be
Yeah,
down.
yeah, we'll go on Tuesday. So if you're available next
Okay.
this upcoming Tuesday, we'd love to
Okay.
have you.
I'll see what I can do.
Absolutely, sounds good.
Yeah, but for me, you can catch me on Fireside Sports. We actually just recently uploaded our first NFL preview video,
Mhm.
and we try and upload twice a week, working around school schedules and all that. Not the easiest, but we do
Yeah,
our
I get
best.
it.
Hey,
Make,
you,
I feel you.
you're doing everything you can, Freddie. What can you
yeah,
say?
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, like I said, all their links will be down in the description down below. I would definitely recommend checking it out. Freddie and Chris are both wonderful people. I love all the analysis we got here today. So, on top of that, you can check out my links in the description down below as well. Just Miller Football everywhere, Miller Football _ Twitter, TikTok. I refuse to call it X, by the way. So, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you'll be able to find me there. And then obviously here on YouTube. Make sure to leave a like down below. Really appreciate it. Helps out the channel a ton. Shows you care about the videos, and that's always a great thing. And definitely make sure to subscribe. We just recently hit 250 subs, which is fantastic. I love
Nice.
it. Thank y'all for that.
Love that.
We're going to be going hard once the season starts. Obviously, we got to finish out these team previews for the rest of the month, but it's going to be a lot of exciting things coming up over the next year, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. But yeah, all that being said, I think that about wraps us up here. So to everyone out there watching, and obviously the two wonderful gentlemen joining me here today, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.